Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Jacob here. Today I'm going to be doing another book haul. This one's not going to be as long as some of my others, as I'm not going to actually be reading the backs of most of the books. I'm just kind of showing off some cool covers, mostly because a lot of these are older science fiction books and some sword and sorcery books, and a lot of them just don't really have a lot going on the back of the cover. So, I mean, they have like maybe a paragraph, if that, and sometimes it's not even related to the book. It'll just be like praise from other authors and stuff like that. But yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into it. First up, I have a new Star Trek book, Planet of Judgment, by Joe Haldeman, winner of the Hugo and Nebula Awards. I have not read this one, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. It is a very short read. It might honestly be based on either an episode or just one that hasn't been done. I'm not really sure. I know there's a lot of these Star Trek books. I've been getting a lot in my possession. I know a lot of them are based on episodes, but I also know a lot of them aren't. I honestly haven't researched that, so I'm not 100% sure. Next one is one I am pretty excited about. Conan of, I'm going to pretend to pronounce this correctly, and I'm probably wrong, Aquilania. If anyone knows the right way to pronounce that, by all means let me know. But it's got some really classic, cool Conan art. And this is one of the ones done by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. And so yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, as I have been trying to track a lot of these down this year. And this one matches the covers of some of the other ones I've already gotten. Next up is Casca, and this is book 3. And it says, Casca is wanted for desertion. So yeah, Casca the Barbarian by Barry Sadler. Oh, I said book 3, my bad. It is book 5. In the barbaric Northlands, the eternal mercenary discovers new battles and the love of the Lady Lydia. I've seen Casca books pop up in different books discussing pulp works. I'm honestly not sure what I'm in store for. I've heard some people say it's really good, and I've heard others kind of describe it as a more sword and sorcery version of like Long Arm, if you're familiar with those like Western series where it's like, I don't know the best way to describe it. I had an older person once describe it to me as the lusty Westerns, in which it's basically porn with shootouts. I'm hoping that's not the case with this, but we shall see. And then I have another L. Sprague de Camp, and this is The Hand of Zir, and it says book 2 of the Krishna series. And it has this really cool like painting of what looks to be a train pulled by a mammoth. I have not read any of the Krishna series, so yeah, it looks like it's gonna be pretty interesting. I am also trying to read more L. Sprague de Camp, so that falls right into that. And then I have The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, kind of a cool cover of that. I have not actually read The Martian Chronicles, which I know I need to, because I do love Ray Bradbury. I have been watching a lot of the Ray Bradbury theater, which I'm hoping The Martian Chronicles wasn't serialized in some form in that, because going back to read his short stories, it's kind of thrown me off, because a lot of his short stories were actually made into episodes for the Ray Bradbury theater, and I don't know. It's made it hard to finish some of his short stories, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Next up, I have Marion Zimmer Bradley's The Bloody Sun, a novel in the classic, what does it say, Dark Over series, which I have also not read. Yeah, and it kind of looks like it's going to be science fiction, maybe a little bit of fantasy thrown in. I love the classic sci-fi art where everyone's outfits, they're like, everyone's kind of just dressed as fantasy characters with laser guns. Maybe that's just me, but I've always kind of found that interesting. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I got all these books in like a buy box thing, so I didn't really know what I was getting, which kind of made it fun, but at the same time there's a lot of like pieces of other series thrown in here. So I'm gonna be starting a lot of series with like books 2, 3, or in Casca series 5. So that's going to be interesting. This next up is Edward E. Doc Smith's The Galaxy Primes. I actually really love E. Doc Smith. This is not one of my favorite covers for his books though, and I also don't know if this falls into the Doomarest series at all, but I'm going to be excited to find that out. Then I have Andre Norton's The Lore of Witchworld, and this does have a pretty cool cover. I've been wanting to read some of the Witchworld series for a while now, so hopefully this will be a decent jumping in point. I have Paulo Williams, Book 5 of the Pelbar Cycle, and Ambush of Shadows, which has it's like a burning longship. And it says Their Last Mistake on the back. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to jump in at Book 5 and see why these Vikings are getting their ship set on fire. Next up, I have Conan the Wanderer, which is also by L. Sprague de Camp and Len Carter. And I can't tell you what it's about because, once again, nothing on the back. But it's still pretty cool. I don't know if this is just like a collection of short stories or if these are all like full novels, but I'm going to be excited to find that out. Another L. Sprague de Camp. This is L. Sprague de Camp with Christopher Stasheff, which I don't know if I'm ever pronouncing that right, but I hope I am. He wrote the Warlock Wandering series and a whole bunch of other stuff, another science fiction fantasy author. And this is The Enchanter Reborn. It's definitely going to be interesting to read this and kind of see how they, work together. And then next up, I got Tanith Lee's The Gold Unicorn, another fantasy book here. That looks pretty cool. Land of Unreason. This is by L. Sprague de Camp and Fletcher Pratt. I did not realize L. Sprague de Camp did that many co-written books. That's going to be interesting. I might need to track down more of those and see if he did it with, all the different authors he did that with. And then I have A Multitude of Monsters, an inevitable sequel to A Malady of Magics by Craig Shaw Gardner. This looks like it's either going to be like fantasy. I mean, it's obviously going to be fantasy, but I don't know if it's going to be like a satirical fantasy because I have been running into a lot of those. And I'll be honest, they're not my favorite genre, and definitely not my favorite books to read. My fantasy either has to be like serious or sword and sorcery or pulpy even. Yeah, I've never just been big into like satire series, but hopefully I'm wrong about that. Next up, I have Andre Norton's The Lavender Green Magic. And I can't really tell you what's going on in the cover, but I'm pretty sure that's a cat shooting laser beams out of its eyes in the back. So, should be pretty cool. Another Andre Norton's. This is Yurth Burden, the new novel and a Dahl original. This looks like it's going to be some sort of like fantasy science fiction mashup, which I like. I actually really like Sword and Planet books. It's not really a genre that I see played around in today, so to get my Sword and Planet fix, I do tend to have to look into older writers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do wish more people wrote Sword and Planet today. Next up is Anne McCaffrey's Volume 3 of the Harper Howe trilogy, The Dragon Drums. And Anne McCaffrey is, of course, the author of the Dragon Riders of Perth series and a bunch of other stuff. I've never heard of the Harper Howe trilogy, so that'll be neat to jump in at book 3. Then I have The Time Curve, Startling and Prophetic Tales by the world's greatest science fiction authors. So yeah, this is an anthology, and these are really like short anthologies. I've picked up some of these for horror, like the Shadow 7 series. But yeah, this has John Wyndham, who I've not heard about, A.E. Van Vogt, which I've read, Clifford D. Simak, which I've read, Lester Del Rey I've read, Robert Bloch I've read, Fritz Lieber I've read, and I've read Andre Norton. I just haven't read the Witchworld series. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what stories wound up in The Time Curve. Another L. Sprague de Camp book. This is The Hostage of Zir, book 3 in the Krishna series. So I do at least have 2 books in the same series. And it's Paul Anderson, who is another science fiction fantasy author, wrote it as First Class. See, it says it right there on the cover. You guys can see it. But yeah, this is another one with like, looks like a long ship that's been converted to a bunch of stuff going through ruins. So I will read these at least in some semblance of an order. Maybe I'll end up doing a video on the entire Krishna series. Next up we have Frederick Paul and Jack Williamson, The Reefs of Space. It says, buried in his mind were the seeds of man's only hope, around his neck, a collar that could explode at any moment. And this shows, I don't know if you guys can see that, but two basically half-naked people running through what looks like a forest made of crystals. Which I wish I could go through some of my shelves right now, because there's a lot of, I feel like, especially science fiction covers where for some reason people are just half naked running away from, you know, the viewer with their back to like the cover. Yeah, and I've never really understood why, because a lot of times like that never actually happens in the book and has no bearing whatsoever on the story inside. So it really makes you wonder if they kind of like bought the painting, the publishers did, before they put the books out and just didn't really know what was in them. Which, from what I've heard of classic paperback publishing, was probably the case in a lot of like times. Then next I have The Parallel Man by Richard Purtill. I hope I pronounced that right. And it says, a science fiction novel of dragons and demons and other worlds. So it's going to be interesting to see what science fiction elements come into play in this, because I mean this looks like a straight up fantasy. I mean, we got the guy with the shield, the dragon blowing fire, and there in the corner, if you guys can see it, oops, I showed y'all the wrong corner. There in the corner is a maiden, maybe a princess or a noble lady. Usually that's the case in these books, who this guy is trying to save, and he's got the classic no pants fantasy fighter look. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that becomes science fiction. Got Isaac Asimov's The Naked Sun. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the series it's a part of. I have not read this. I actually haven't read a lot of Isaac Asimov series, sadly. And then next I got Frederick Pohls and C.M. Kornbluth, The Wonder Effect. And it says, two brilliant satirists. I'm not sure what satire in this, so it shall be interesting to see that. It's a cool cover though. Alright, just a few more. Marion Zimmer Bradley's The Star of Danger, a novel in the classic Darkover series. I don't know anything about the Darkover series still at this point, but I will say it has some really cool covers. James White, The Star Surgeon. Could Conway and the medics save their patients when Sector General became the target of an interstellar war? Gotta love how vague, like the vague titles that are always in like older science fiction books. Sectors General, Star-Lord Prime. It's always just a lot of strings of nouns. Next up I have Evangeline Walton's Prince of Anwen, the first branch of the Magbigon? Probably pronouncing that wrong, but at least this is the first book one of any series I've gotten in this. That's pretty neat. But yeah, really cool cover. Obviously some sort of fantasy book. Got what looks to be like a Celtic warrior running past a glowing lady. So yeah, that looks like it's gonna be pretty interesting. And it is interesting to note too, just how short a lot of these classic fantasy books are. I mean, that's one way to tell that these are old books, because we're not at the point yet where fantasy novels are complete door stoppers. And then next up I have Andre Norton's Victoria Janis, which I've seen other copies of this book, and it makes me think this is a little more of a fantasy series, because I've seen copies with different covers. Or maybe those covers were wrong, but this one looks very much more like science fiction, as these people are green. And it looks like he's wearing like more of like a high-tech suit, with like antennas and stuff coming out, than like ring mail or anything like that. And then the last two books I have are The Best of Frederick Brown, edited by Robert Bloch, which I'm not gonna lie, I got mostly because of this cover, in which this guy looks like he's being squeezed to death by a Yeti. I mean, it's just a beautiful cover, and it looks like the artist actually signed this, so this is obviously a painting, and that says Corbin 1976, so I will look up that artist at some point. And the same with the next one, which is Starlight, the great short fiction of Albert Bester, and it says it includes The Light Fantastic and Starlight Starbright. And I got this because it's got giant praying mantis going over an apocalyptic world. People are like running, and giant praying mantis, which, you know, I love classic science fiction horror movies. I love all the giant bug stuff, so even if I wind up not liking these short stories, this is gonna look awesome on my shelf, and I'm excited about that. I'm pretty sure these were also library books at one point, or maybe just somebody that really cared for them, because both of these covers have been wrapped in plastic, which usually I only see when I buy like old library books. This is kind of cool if these were just taken really good care of. But yeah, short and sweet book haul there. It'll be interesting to see if I can manage to do some reviews on these later this year. But I hope you guys enjoyed checking out some of these cool covers and seeing some classic books, and maybe even, you know, you were inspired to check out some of these series and books on your own. Maybe don't do what I do and start with book 1 instead of book 2, 3, 4, and 5. But, you know, that's just me. But yeah, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.